Hello everybody, welcome to the next BrowEdit tutorial. This is the new Lightmaps revamp tutorial. The reason why I called it revamped because I did a previous Lightmap tutorial, but I don't think I was as clear as I should have been. So this is a more concise and easier to understand guide that I'll be covering a variety of topics with light editing. So the first thing we'll talk about is the actual lights edit mode and creating light bulbs. Secondly is moving on to the properties of a light bulb and what does each property mean and how it has an effect on your lighting. Next, we're going to actually do some real calculating light maps to produce a sun and shadows, very basic, but then we're going to move on to adding colors and actually changing the ambient lighting so you can now have your map appear to look at different for different themes or whatever you want. Next, we're going to look at wall lighting, so how to produce a light on a wall, and particularly this is going to focus more on windows and that sort of thing. Next, we're going to look at using fog overlays on a map, and what fog overlay is really that it's like it's an overlay itself on a map. It covers the basic lighting to produce some other effects. So if you look in Anthill or Payon Dungeon, you'll notice this overlay on that, and that's what really we're going to be talking about. So that's that, and now let's get on to our light edit mode. So here is just a very basic piece of Prontera that I've just copied and pasted for this particular map. And we're going to do all of our lighting on this template itself. So you can see I already have something going on here. I have my shadows, I have my sun sort of thing, but we're going to get to that later. So to actually access light edit mode, go to edit mode, lights edit. And you'll notice that this new navigational menu pops up here. It's categorized as lights. So if you click lights, you'll notice I already have two lights inside this map. So how to actually create that? It's very easy. Just click Control. I usually use left control, and then left mouse button click. And you'll notice you spawned a bulb. And if it's highlighted in red, you've known you selected it. Now to move this bulb, just hold your left click mouse button and then drag your mouse. It should move it. To raise it up and down, hold Control and drag your mouse. And that just moves it up and down. Okay? So now let's talk about the properties of this light bulb. If you click the light bulb, which it already is selected, hit enter. You'll notice that we have a bunch of different properties. The name is quite obvious, is the name of the light bulb. Next, your X, Y, and Z positions. This is really just where it's located on your map. And the color. Now the color is it's generated as an RGB combination. RGB meaning red, green, blue. And that's enough to create all the colors you need. Now RGB goes up to 255 up to a value of 255 for each slot. So 255 times 255 times 255 is roughly 16 million different colors you could produce out of this. So it's quite a bit. You have a lot of freedom. But however, in BrowEdit, the RGB combination is not in a value from 0 to 255. It's in a decimal value from 0 to 1. Meaning, if I had a RGB combination of 255, 255, 255, 255 divided by 255 is 1. Same thing over here, because I chose it to be 255, it'd be 1. Alright? And if I wanted half of 255, so 127.5, I would put 0.5, because 127.5 divided by 255 is 0.5. So that's why we use decimal values. Now be careful you do not type in any characters, letters in this, or else it'll crash BrowEdit. Keep it values only. Now the intensity is really how strong the light will have an effect on the map of producing whatever kind of color, light, or whatever it is. And intensity is extremely important when it comes to really how well it'll brighten your map. And I'll talk about that later when we actually get to calculating light maps. Next is the range, and the range is pretty self-explanatory as well. It's really how far this light bulb is going to brighten our map. So I think I switched off light edit mode here. Let me go back to that. So if I just typed in a value of 500, you'll notice that the radius of the circle, or the sphere in this case, increased. And you really want to make sure this sphere is big enough to cover your entire map. Next is your max light increment. I wouldn't really touch this for now. I usually leave it generically at 256. It is important. You can change this value to a lower number, but that will just really also have an effect on how well it'll brighten your map too. But really, you just need to focus on intensity for this matter. Now the light fall off range is the overlay of the light itself on the map and how strong it's going to be. It's similar to intensity, but it's different because this really gives it a light or dark effect on your map, how transparent or opaque this light will be. And generally we want to leave it at 0.01, but we're going to leave this for 1 for now, because we're just talking about properties. Lastly, the cast shadows. So this is really the difference between whether you want to cast a shadow off an object or not. And generally you only have one of these cast shadows used in a map, unless you wanted to use it for independent boxes or pieces in a map. Or let's say it was different rooms, so you definitely want shadows for each room. Alright, so that's the properties of a light bulb. Now let's get to actually producing lights and really seeing how this all comes together nicely. So the first thing I did to create a generic sun and shadow map is producing two light bulbs, a sun and ambient. So if I just click sun, it should navigate right to my sunlight, which is right here. If I hit enter on that, you'll notice I have a color combination of 0, 0, 0, meaning it's default generic. There's no color to it. It's just basic light. And really that's what you want to keep it as if you wanted something as generic as this. Next we have the intensity. I always keep the intensity as 127 for my sunlights, because I just noticed over time it just worked out so well in different areas, and how the intensities have an effect on producing smaller lights in different areas, and it allows it to see it. And we'll talk about that later. Range is 2000, so it covers the entire map, and who cares about max light increment? However, the importance really is light fall-off range and casting shadows. This is a sunlight, so we do not cast shadows, and we keep it at 0.01 for the transparency and opacity of the light itself when it produces that lighting on the map. Next is our ambient light. So let's go to that. So that navigates to there, and you'll notice that the ambient light is facing the bottom left-hand side of this particular map. And what that means is it'll cast that shadow towards the top right hand corner, because that's where the bubble is going to push towards that light. So if you understand what I'm trying to say, I'll show you how that differs as I change the light direction. But anyways, back to the properties. So you'll notice I have an intensity of 100, and that's definitely enough to make sure that the light shadows is not dark enough. It's transparent enough that it's nice. It's appealing. It's not dark and ugly. The color is default because this is just default lighting. The range is 2000 again because we want to cover the map, and light fall off, very important, is 0.01, and we've cast shadows is ticked. You'll notice that if you do create a new light bulb, and if you try to deselect this by just clicking it, well, right now I can do it now, but if you create a brand new light bulb and you try deselecting it, it will not work. BrowEdit seems to be buggy in this sort of thing, so just restart BrowEdit, make sure you save your map before you do that, and you should be able to edit the properties again. So let me show you how this actually all comes together. If we hit generate, calculate light maps, after you've defined your light bulbs, you'll notice this loading screen. This is the progress bar, which loads up to the top. When it hits 100, it'll go back to your map. You can click the preview button and you'll actually notice the light's doing its job. If we moved the ambient light to a different location, let's say to this side, let's see how that has an effect on producing the shadows. Alright, so I just finished calculating light maps, and now look at this. Because my ambient light or shadow is on the top right hand corner, that's pushing all the shadows towards the bottom left hand corner of this map. And that's how the shadows really work. So generally, depending on where this shadow bulb is, so if I move it right there, everything would be pushed down straight south of this map. Alright, so I'll show you how that looks. And there we have it. So seeing, because my again light bulb for shadowing is right in the middle, or top right above this map, it's pushing it straight down. Alright, so that's really how the shadow has an effect on the map, and where you locate it, it's going to push the direction of the shadows itself. Alright, so now let's move on to actually adding colors to a map, or changing up the default lighting. So I actually have a couple of templates already made for this particular tutorial, and I'll show you Prontera Midday. So here's a midday map, and you'll notice that the color is more like a sunsetty, anywhere between midday, exactly like that. And how did I do that? All I had to do was I changed the sun color combination. The shadow remains the same. The only thing I changed was the color combination of the sun. And you could really find out any RGB color combination online and just copy its combination in the boxes below. Be careful that it's also in decimal form. And that's all I did. And then just recalculate light maps, and there you go, all done. So that's another example of using color. Now look, now I'll give you another example, but this time we're going to talk about ambient light. So which is Windows Global Lighting. So I'm going to open another template on that, and that's going to be used for our Frontier Night version. So you'll notice here is my Frontier Night. It's a version, it's just my own way of doing the night version of Frontier, and you'll notice I have some independent lights here, but I'll show you how this all comes together. The global lighting is really an overlay as well on your map without making any light bulbs. So if I change this from, it's all, but keep in mind it's just RGB combination. If I change this from that 0.21 to 1, you will notice that the overlay will be back to normal, and then everything's bright again. So this is very useful, an easy to use tool to change your map, whether it be from to dark or to a very dark setting, or it could be for I don't know, whatever you want. It could be ocean, it could be any theme that you want to change your map to. It can even be like a Morocco sunny day, whatever you want. That's really the beauty of your light ambient your global lighting. So use that. The next thing I did in this map to give it that look is, oops, wrong map. The next thing I did is I added independent lights over here. Now you can notice the reason I did that is to give the illusion that you have lamppost lights, and the lamppost light is really brightening up the square. You'll also notice that I have a shade change from this dark region to the middle of this map. And how did I do that? All I did was I added my new color lights. Now, whenever you make color on a map, I always keep the intensities at a specific level. And that is 100, remove cast shadows, and the fall off is 1. So always have a fall off of 1 whenever you're adding colors, just because I found that it just works out really nicely and it's not casting any sort of shadows. The reason why I keep it as 100 is because if I had my this color combination at 192, that would actually prevent another light from being seen. Yeah, it's weird because depending on the intensities, you could actually block out lights from showing even though it's been calculated on there. That's why we keep the intensities rather low to give every other light a chance to be seen when it's calculated. In the middle of the map, you'll notice I have this thing, this particular light that's giving a basic, I don't know, it just brightens up slightly the middle of the map, and the properties is 100, 111, 300, so I have that extra brightness. Now the reason why I have it so high, I don't have it as low, because the further the light bulb hits the ground, the more intense it gets, regardless if you have an intensity of 100 or 1. So I'll give you an example. Notice that the intensity is rather low here, but if I just push it to the ground and I just hit calculate without shadows, look how bright that gets. So that's the reason why I keep it like that. You always want the light bulbs to be, depending on how far radius is, you would want to raise it above the map, and just that way it won't be as powerful on the map itself. So that's what nice is. We just give it a little bit of a little brightening effect. The same thing goes with these little guys. The lamppost is a range of 20, 100 for intensity, keeping it small. Cast shadows is off, and light fall off of 1. And that's what I use to generate my little colors on here. And you could use the edit mode global height edit tool and copy and paste as many lights as you want, or even use the predefined tool I talked about in my previous tutorial, how you don't have to create lights anymore, you can just use your predefined favorites. So the next thing we're going to talk about is your wall light editing. So that's really, how do you make lights appear like this? So here's just a simple box I made. You'll notice that I have lights coming off these windows to show that we have sunlight coming through or something, right? The first thing you must consider, whenever you put lights on a wall, they only appear to show nicely whenever you're generating it in the north or east direction. South or west won't actually calculate as nicely. So whenever you generate your rooms, try to keep it so that your rooms can only be seen in the north and east region. That way your character will be like this. So if I just change this up very quickly, and this is what I meant. So whenever you actually build a room, try to make it so it's like this. The reason why is that your camera in game will always point north. So you'll be really seeing a map like this, and you can walk around the room without any interruption of other walls, preventing you from seeing your character. And that's really why the north and east lights only work better than the south and west. Now, how to actually get these lights to appear? Easy. Make a light, like I always did. This is just my center light. It's 100. Cast shadow should be off. That I don't know why that was on. But the importance is to get the light to appear on the wall. I put the light in the middle of this particular mall. And how to get that so perfectly in the middle? You can actually snap your lights like that. So if I just move my light around, it's not really snapping to the grid. But if I hold shift, it snaps perfectly to the grid. And that's very useful when you apply your lights on a wall. Now the properties again, 125 just to get a little more room on the radius, and 1 in cast shadows is off. So keep using that rule. It's an excellent rule of thumb. And lastly, I have just a simple, again, overlay in the middle of my map to give it a little bit of brightening effect, so it's not as, it's a little purplish look, which is kind of nice. And yeah, just a couple of walls here. I guess we're going to move on to the next thing, which is our fog parameters. If we open the anthill map, you'll notice that we have just a simple, I don't know, it looks like a red and purplish lighting look on the map. However, if we go in game, so again, if you look in game, you'll notice this is the same map, anthill or 1, with the generic purple and red. But the fog overlay does this. So you can see that change. You can see how now we have like that musky mist effect or whatever to give that map a that more atmospheric look that you really want in like a cavern or an ant place. And this fog effect looks really good on all sorts of different map applications, whether it be caverns or caves. Specifically, caves is really good, or even like sandy beaches and deserts. And I'll show you that. So here's a Morok field with that sandy look. So without fog, it's just a very simple map. It doesn't look that appealing. It's just very basic lighting. However, if I put a fog overlay on that, the whole thing changes. It looks so much better. And I just begun using this in a couple of my maps, and it really does make a big difference. It really makes it shine and look much more appealing. So I'll show you how that's even done. So to do that, it's very easy. If you open up a client data folder, you should be able to find a file called fog parameter table. In the fog parameter table, this is where you really define the fog intensity levels and all that fun stuff. So, as you can see, we have a couple of, actually most regular maps that require fog are in here, but let me just give you an example. So let's go to anthill actually. Anthill would be a good example. So here's your anthill one. So first of all, to define it, you put the name of the map, .rsw, with the num sign, and then you have your combination here. Honestly, to be quite honest with you, I just copy and paste off of previously used fog overlays that I find appealing, that I know would look really well in my map, and just use that. I'm not too sure how it actually comes all together. I believe this is like the RGB combination. This is like something else, or this could actually be the RGB combination in hex, but I'm not too sure about anything else. But it does really come nicely together if you just find a map that uses the right fog overlay, and then just copy that onto your own map template. So if I had a map called custom, just type in custom like that, and if I wanted to use this one, this combination, just copy paste it, save it, and you're done. And of course, this fog parameter table goes into your data. That's the location. Data fog parameter table. Make a gref out of that, and have your server read it. Okay, so we covered lights edit mode, light and creating light bulbs. We covered the properties. We talked about calculating light maps, producing sun and shadows, and we also talked about adding colors, the intensities, and ambient lighting and that's effect. And we also talked about fog lighting, and last we did talk about use fog overlays and that sort of uses. So hopefully this is much more clear than before, and you have a better grasp of creating lights on your map, and go crazy with it. Simple maps look really well, look really good with the proper lighting effect. You don't need overly detailed maps to make it look good. Really, you would find that most gravity maps are very simple in their overall design, but the lighting is very well done. So good luck to you with that, and I guess I'll talk to you guys very soon. Bye.